So my name is Jeremiah Dunham. I'm a senior software development manager at AWS, and I lead the IAM Access Analyzer team. And I am joined by Andre Human from GoTo Technologies and Jaka Hanagi from Wolters Kluwer. We're going to talk to you about IAM Access Analyzer and how you can use it to empower developers to implement least privilege IAM permissions. So here is what is going to happen. I'm going to start off by giving you an overview of IAM Access Analyzer. Then I'm going to hand it over to Andre from GoTo, who's going to talk to you about how they have helped their engineers move faster using Access Analyzer. And then finally, Jacques is going to play us out by talking about how they moved to a central governance model using Access Analyzer, as well as several other AWS services. So, to get started, the whole goal of IAM Access Analyzer as a service is to help you get to least privilege. Now, we know that this is a journey and not just a step that you take overnight. And this is for a few reasons. One, because the permissions that your applications need may evolve over time, but also just because sometimes you don't know exactly what you need and you have to over-provision in the beginning and eventually scope things down as you learn more. So the way we think about this is there's three phases in the permission lifecycle: set, verify, and refine. And so you start out by setting the fine-grained permissions that you think your application is going to need. This is like proactive part, right, as you're creating permissions. Then afterwards, you go back and verify that you have set things correctly and that the applications have just what they need and nothing more. And then finally, you often find that, well, you have over-provisioned even by a little bit, and so you want to scope things down. That is the refine stage. To help you do this, IAM Access Analyzer has several capabilities. In the set phase, we have IAM policy generation, which uses CloudTrail logs to help you generate a policy that has just the permissions that are necessary to execute the things that were seen in the logs. We also have policy validation and custom policy checks. These are static APIs that you can call and pass your policies in to check for things like whether or not the policy is well-formed, follows AWS guidelines and best practices, and also follows your organization's best practices. That's in custom policy checks. So using those, you can actually look for specific things in policies and ensure that the things you don't want to show up there don't, or the things that you do. On the verify and refine, because these two steps happen sequentially, but they happen kind of together. Once you identify the permissions that are present, generally you want to take the next step and refine those things. To do that, we have two analyzers. One is unused access, the other is external access, and I'm going to actually talk about those in more detail in just a moment. So, our big differentiator is something called automated reasoning. And if you're not familiar, I'm sure you're all familiar with IAM policies and IAM policy syntax, and you know that the IAM policy language itself is very expressive. It has conditions, has operators, you can do all kinds of things. And if you start with just say an identity policy, maybe then you add some resource-based policies, add some SCPs, add permission boundaries, add all kinds of things. And then you go, okay, does Jaka have access to my database? I don't know, because there's a lot of policies that some allows, some denies, conditions, and it's like it can get pretty overwhelming. You'll know whether or not Jaka has access to my database because at some point he will be able to successfully execute a request against the database. But up to that moment, it may still be in question. So with automated reasoning, what we can do is the idea is, again, automated reasoning. We have algorithms that can think through, semantically understand the policies that are at play and answer questions like, does Jaka have access to my database or not? The way we do this is with this falls under an area that we call provable security, which is basically using mathematical proof to determine that certain security properties do or do not hold. That is what we are doing in Access Analyzer, at least in parts of it. Some of the features of Access Analyzer don't use it. But if you want to learn more, check out the link or scan the QR code. So our mental model is pretty simple. And if you're familiar with IAM policies, this will make sense to you. Ultimately, we're trying to establish who can access what. The who's are IAM principles, the what's are AWS resources, and the can is policies. So we have analyzers on both sides. So on the who side, this is Unused Access Analyzer. And actually, I'm kind of curious, for the folks in the audience, is anyone using the Unused Access Analyzer today? Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. If you're not using it, it's super easy. You go in, you turn it on. You can turn it on for your account or your org, and it will. You also set a period, 90 days, 270 days, whatever period it is that you define as unused, and it'll tell you, here's all the things that aren't used. And that's great, because your remediation is super simple. You just go delete it or change the permissions to scope it down. Now the unused stuff goes away. On the what side, up until very recently, we had just the External Access Analyzer. So this is also something that you will want to use. This will help you identify, using the resource permissions, whether or not anyone outside of your organization or account can access the resources. Okay. A little bit more about unused access analysis. So as I mentioned, you set the period, and here are the things that it will look for. It will look for access keys, passwords, roles, and also within a given role, any unused services or actions. So super handy, gives you a really easy way to identify the unused things in your environment and go Marie Kondo style, clean that stuff up because it does not bring joy. Also, these findings get published to Security Hub. So if you use that, you can consume them there. And we also have an Event Bridge integration. So if you want to receive notification or trigger some automated cleanup workflow using Lambda or something, you can do that. All right, external access analysis. So as I mentioned here, you define the zone of trust, either account or organization. And if there is public access to your resource, you'll find out about that. You'll also find out if any accounts that are outside of that boundary, so if it's an account analyzer, if any other accounts have access to the resource, or if it's an organization boundary, if there's any accounts outside of the organization that have access. Some of these things are legitimate, right? Like you might have a third-party tool or a partner or somebody who you do grant access, and that's cool. When that happens, you can basically acknowledge and archive the finding, and it will not show up again unless that access changes. But you might also find things that you didn't expect. And those probably require a little research. Make sure that whoever has access, it really should. This is one of the features. In fact, this analyzer was the original Access Analyzer, the first feature that we launched with many years ago. And this feature does use automated reasoning to do its analysis. So it uses the provable security assurance. Similar to unused access findings, findings are aggregated and sent to Security Hub, and we also have Event Bridge integration so that you can get the findings there. Okay. So, in the refine and verify stages, as we discussed, we have these two analyzers, and we've had these now, the first one for several years, or the external access for several years, unused access for about a year and a half. And just this morning, if you watch the keynote, the first new feature announcement, new product announcement, was internal access analysis. This is the accumulation of several years of research and work, and we're very, very excited to make this available to you all today. With internal access analysis, it really rounds out the picture. So the idea behind internal access analysis is that you would turn it on for your most critical resources. So you can think of your S3 buckets, DynamoDB tables, RDS snapshots, things like this that would contain sensitive customer data, financial data, the things that you really, really, really want to protect and you really want to lock down access to. And Internal Access Analyzer will pull the collection of all the policies that might apply to the principals in your org or in your account that would define who has access inside the org or inside the account. It does the analysis and it says, yes, Jaka does have access to my database, and here are the actions that Jaka can perform, and here are the conditions under which he can perform those actions. When you get all the findings for that particular resource, you can review in a very simple fashion and say, yep, that's legit, that's legit. Oh, I got to go look a little closer at this one. The intern probably should not have access to my production financial data, for example. So, as I mentioned, you can fully discover who in the organization has access. This also uses automated reasoning, and when we say collectively evaluates multiple policy types, what we mean is identity-based policies, resource-based policies, SCPs, RCPs, and permission boundaries. So all the policies that apply to whether or not someone has access. And we have to do that comprehensive analysis, otherwise you might get a lot of false positives. But with this, you're going to get accurate information. We do have EventBridge integration, which is great because it can help reduce the amount of manual review that you need to do. Because after the initial run, when you get all the initial findings, those findings will be exactly the same unless some access changes. And if you're integrated with EventBridge, you'll get notification about that change. And finally, there is a new unified dashboard. So if you go look at the Access Analyzer console, you will see, and here's an example, external access findings and internal access findings together in a resource-centric view. Now, I would hope that your critical resources don't have a whole bunch of external access, but that's up to you. So the key use cases that we heard from customers that prompted us to really push for the development of this feature was that folks wanted to have comprehensive inventory of who has access to their critical resources for security and compliance requirements, which could include things like generating audit reports. Customers also wanted to make sure that there wasn't some misconfiguration or some accidental or temporary access that was left that was just never cleaned up. We also heard that manual access reviews can be really painful, so we wanted to help with that problem. And then this EventBridge notification to make sure that you're staying on top of things as new or modified access is granted to those resources. You can stay on top of it. Before I turn it over to Andre, which I'm going to do in just a moment, again, I want to thank you so much for attending the session. Also, I want to give a tiny plug. If you're interested in learning more about internal access findings, which includes a handful of real-world use case demos that we're going to give. I'm going to also talk more about the math behind this and why it's kind of crazy how this works. That's going to be tomorrow at IAM307, which is at 2:30. So if you have time and interest, I would love to see you there. Now with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andre from GoTo. He's going to talk about how they help their developers move faster using IAM Access Analyzer.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Let me start with a brief introduction to GoTo. As a leader in cloud communication and IT, GoTo addresses real-world challenges with practical innovation and a customer's first mindset. With our simple-to-adopt sorry. Now I'm trying to speak German as well. so that's not good. Sorry, I am a bit nervous. This is the first time that I'm doing this. With our secure, reliable, and AI-enabled solutions, which are simple to adopt for small and medium-sized businesses and scale to enterprises worldwide. We have about 2,800 employees in multiple countries with nearly $1 billion in annual revenue, demonstrating GoTo's global presence and continuous business growth. Some of our products are GoTo Connect, our online phone system, which is a cloud-based telephone system with features such as voice, video conferencing, and messaging. LogMeIn Resolve, an all-in-one IT management and support software for small and mid-sized businesses and managed service providers. It's part of GoTo's lineup to try and streamline IT support for these type of companies. And then also LogMeIn Rescue, a customizable remote support software for enterprises. It enables IT teams and support professionals to remotely support their customers and access devices and provide the support in a fast and secure way wherever they are in the world. Through strategic acquisition over the past 15 years, we've grown our footprint in AWS significantly with over 100 accounts supporting our teams across the organization with more than 600 IAM users for programmatic access, with thousands of accompanying roles and policies to ensure the right permissions at scale. AWS was central to our move from on-prem to a multi-cloud environment, and this is some of the key features that we're actually using in AWS at the moment, like EC2, S3, RDS, EBS, OpenSearch, and LB. We were also part of Zelkova, or early adopters of Zelkova, and also participated in its presentation at reInvent in 2018. And as you can see, Zelkova was the predecessor to Access Analyzer. This early engagement actually demonstrates GoTo's ongoing commitment to innovation and best practices in cloud security and governance. Starting with this, with the scaling, IAM actually became a complex challenge for us within the company. We had teams that were able to manage their own IAM across various accounts, which was somewhat problematic. We introduced a homegrown solution with a combination of services like CloudFormation, Lambda, and Zelkova in our largest shared accounts, which was actually very decentralized and kind of made our team to become guardians for these kind of deployments. We also try to incorporate third-party tools like Cloudexplaining and Parliament to try and address some of these issues that we've been having with managing our IAM on this type of scale, but that did not fit our needs. That actually led us to introduce or look at Access Analyzer because we needed a more standardized and automated approach, and led us to actually incorporate Access Analyzer into our workflow. One of the main challenges that we had was, like we mentioned before already, engineering teams were able to commit or make IAM changes directly in the accounts, whether that was programmatically or directly within the accounts. Trying to mitigate one of these, or actually trying to mitigate this problem, led to new obstacles when we introduced some of the requirements that our team had to manually review these policy changes. And like I mentioned, it introduced additional problems because these requests came in as direct messages, emails, pull requests, or tickets. And because we now have a central team that try to manage this, we became a bottleneck for some of the teams. And it became time consuming, and we caused significant delays and blocked engineering teams at some stages. This also slowed down the engineering teams because sometimes the governance team had to reach back out to the engineers to get clarification, which increased obviously the overhead and the review cycle. We addressed these challenges with clear goals. We introduced the requirement for least privilege across all of our IAM resources. We needed to increase the speed and flexibility for our engineering teams to boost productivity. We need to empower our engineering teams to be able to work independently and provide something that was somewhat self-service. And we needed to automate compliance checks and best practices and provide timely and actionable feedback to ensure these secure changes. Now, how did we address these? We implemented a few key strategies. We're defining all of our IAM resources as infrastructure as code in a single centrally managed repository and automation pipeline where engineers can create pull requests that can be tracked and reviewed in one single place. This peer review by the engineering teams, or in certain cases where escalations are needed, the governance team also helps with our SOC 2 compliance. All of this was built around Access Analyzer's validation capabilities and custom policy checking. This enabled us to make sure that we reach the maximum compliance that we can within the company. These automated deployments also gave us reliable feedback for the engineering teams to know what they actually need to address. Now let's quickly have a look at a high-level overview of how we've implemented this. So as mentioned, we've got a single IAM repository where we house all of our code. Engineering teams create a pull request or commit the changes and create a pull request. This actually triggers our automation pipeline. Within our automation pipeline, we've got Access Analyzer. Once this is kicked off, Access Analyzer actually takes the new policy or the updated policy and compares it against a set of control policies that we've had. It generates feedback and commits it, or put that feedback as a comment back onto the pull request, giving the engineering team an idea of what they need to fix to be able to move forward again. If the actual validation passes, it goes back to the engineers where somebody from the team needs to review it before it can actually be applied. If not, if the validation fails, it goes back to the engineer to make changes, make sure that it's compliant and adheres to company best practices, and it will actually kick off the pipeline again. If there's an exception, say for instance, somebody needs a certain specific permission that we don't allow, that is actually triggered as an exception, and the governance team needs to decide whether or not they can let us pass or not. And as you can see, it can be applied or it gets reverted back to the engineering team. And then lastly, any changes that is required from the engineers or from the reviewer goes back to the engineer, who actually then needs to update the pull request with new data or with some changes to make sure that it's compliant and follow our best practices. Now, this is an example of a failed validation and exactly how it would look in our pipeline. We've got overly permissive permissions in the policy document, which is S3 get star and S3 put star, and also a resource star, which is not allowed within our regulations. And this you can actually see on the output. It is clearly stated there that what needs to be changed, what needs to be updated, and why it is problematic. So this is a nice little example. To mitigate that, this is basically the same policy, but just in a passing state. So what we've done here is we've updated the actions. So instead of having S3 star or S3 get star, we now have S3 get object and specifically S3 put object, with also a very specific resource ARN, which adheres to our policy structures, right? And the output confirms that. So from the cloud architecture team or from the governance team side, we don't need to actually do anything here because the engineering team can just approve this and it will actually be applied. And this is an example of a reference policy and an updated policy. This, in this case, the reference policy starts with a very permissive section with allow action, and which is a star, and a resource which is a star, which is very permissive. But just below that, we've got the deny rule, which explicitly denies specific actions on a very specific resource. Now, how this works is when you create a policy, like you can see here, where you've got a specific set of actions and a specific resource, Access Analyzer actually compares the two and see that it is compliant. If I would change the resource ARN to match the one you see in the control reference policy, it will fail and it will not pass the validation. And that is how we actually have these set out. So these control reference policies can be quite lengthy at some point in time if you limit or if you want to limit all the actions. But we've decided to have just certain specific actions that we want to limit that can be problematic if we allow that. Now let's look at some of the key benefits this actually gave the company, right? So it improved our turnaround times and it enabled our engineering teams to move more quickly from creation to deployment. We also have a higher throughput for the reviewing teams, making them less dependent on us, and is also noticeable by an increase in code commit frequency, or code frequency and commit history. This actually also translates into higher quality of security and apply policies, which allows us to have more consistent checks and reduces the risk by having permissive or misconfigured policies within our AWS accounts. Finally, this strengthens our communication within the organization by automating the feedback and the validation processes. This enabled the governance team to change roles from being guardians to be more supporters, empowering the company to uphold security standards. Now, before I hand over to Jaka, let's wrap this up with some of the lessons that we've learned. Keep your control policy short, simple, and service-specific. This makes the policies easier to understand for the engineering team and also reduces the runtime of Access Analyzer. Not everybody is familiar with or fully understands the policies that they're trying to write. You need to provide clear guidance for the engineering teams to ensure that they can actually write proper policies and that we can provide better support for the teams. Access Analyzer is a valuable tool, but unfortunately does have some limitations. Please don't tell Jeremiah. For example, it doesn't always evaluate a policy as a whole, especially when you define conditions and specific resources. This allows the engineering teams to craft policies or conditional policies that can try and bypass some of our set out guardrails that we have. Access Analyzer also does not evaluate all of the resources, and some of the actions actually require resource star, and that is something that is not necessarily picked up. Due to this, we had to implement some of these checks programmatically. And then lastly, the Access Analyzer team is constantly improving the service, adding new features, and our close collaboration with the team enabled us to provide feedback, request features, and discuss future enhancements of the product. Thank you. Over to Jaka from Wolters Kluwer.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Thank you. So I'm from Wolters Kluwer. I don't know how many knows this company. Let me give what about our company. So the overview of our company is we are a global leader in professional information and software solution. Typically, we are content delivery company. We sell information, support, health, tax, legal, finance, corporate compliance. Headquarters in Netherlands. Also, we have headquarters in US, New York. We operate 180 countries and 40 plus offices and 20,000 employees. We are actually a product company. Enables critical decisions through domain expertise and trusted technology and recognition responsibilities. We named Forbes most innovative company, strong compliance focus, ethical AI, and committed diversity and inclusion, measurable impact through sustainable and expert solutions. That's the overview of our company. And actually, we are, once upon a time, was like, we grown a lot of acquisition through, and we are 200 years old company. We used to publish through paper, the information. Now we moved to digital. We have some flagship products up to date as a clinical decision support used by 2 million clinical experts. Like an example, I'll tell you, the doctors, if they want the evidence, they cannot go to a lot of friends or a lot of doctors to ask more information. So that's how our company sell that information to them, and they can refer that evidence and then give and come to the conclusion. Say, example, your X-ray says is talking something else for the patient, and the patient is saying something else, and you need a reference, then the up-to-date is the solution for our doctors. CCH, the cloud-based tax accounting suite for Tom firms. Teammate is, I don't know how many people know Teammate. Teammate is a corporate compliance. All big 4 companies use for any compliance for corporate, they use Teammate. OneSumX, a regulatory and risk platform. Enablon is also sustainability and management for corporate. We are also a technology innovation company focused on cloud-native platforms, AI-driven analytics and automation, strategy investment in zero trust tech architecture and privacy, which is, I think everybody wants to know. I mean, everybody wants to go towards zero trust. Leader in digital transformation for regulated industry. We are actually, if you're speaking, we are cut across all the industry. We are a high-tech company who develop most of the solution, and most of the solution are flagship. 200 plus products we develop, and most of the products are flagship. Our journey in AWS, I think 10 years is less. I think more than 10 years AWS. We are using from past maybe 14 to 15 years back, started journey in AWS. I think we had 400 data centers. We moved 400 data centers to cloud. We actually use not only AWS, we are multi-cloud. We also use Azure and GCP, but we also have a lot of solution on AWS. When we started AWS journey, I think identity, nobody cared about it. They thought, okay, you want access, you create identity. Everybody was administrator because we are a product company, and being in a product company, everybody wants administrator access. If you have admin access, anybody can create identity. They thought cloud is safe and secure by default. They don't want it to have any security in place or governance in place. We ended up in thousands of privileged users and IAM roles. 100K IAM roles we had. It's a massive, very massive. Today also we are still, after 15 years, we are still trying to mitigate and clean up. Very painful. Before Analyzer was too painful. We were using a lot of automations, a lot of analytics ourselves, spending a lot of time. We'll see how we used Analyzer and try to mitigate those issues. Broad usage. Somebody wants to access VM, they need administrator access. They don't want to compromise least privilege. They always wanted to have bigger access. They thought bigger access, more power. Integration with multiple products. SaaS, we use a lot of SaaS applications and integrating them. The external access, if you see that in IAM Analyzer, external access was also, we were using a lot of external access, and then we've given a lot of access to external products also. Like an example, right? We used to use some POV or POC, then bring any platform, do it, then forget it. No cleanup. That access will stay away. I really don't know how many in your company, they want access, they never wanted to remove access. I have not seen a single person in my company that raised a ticket for removing access. Not even a single person. So that's how we ended up with identity is complex. We all know that. Identity is very complex. On top of that, the collaboration from the end user is, I feel is almost zero. Never collaborate. Never collaborate. Okay. Your left-hand side, that's how our identity was. We actually around 1,000 accounts in our organization we have. Every account was decentralized. As I said, we actually acquire a lot of companies, and every company comes with a lot of identities, a lot of roles, a lot of permissions, a lot of keys. And if you see that, our identity was decentralized. And nobody knows who created which identity. There was no tagging. Nothing related to that. To identify that identity who was using, it was like nightmare. Really, really nightmare. If you accidentally go and Okay, deactivate. Unfortunately, I don't know how many people have seen now, you can deactivate keys now. Before it was not there. 1 year back, no deactivation of key. It's only delete or create it. Now you can deactivate. When I used to clean up this lot of mess, delete, okay, P1 ticket. Oh, this is not working. And when I sent an email, why didn't you respond? I was not aware. Developed by somebody. I don't know. They will only know when you deactivate or delete it. So now we actually moved from decentralized to centralized. Lot of advantages, right? Lot of advantages. Now we know that the identities are coming from centralized location. By default, all the identities are MFA enabled. Before nothing, no MFA, nothing. And also we are using also identity detection, AI, which actually also identifies sign-in logs and also detect itself if something is coming from other places, or it is a genuine traffic or not genuine traffic, or bad IPs or no bad IPs. It can detect and it can also protect. That's how I moved it. Now we are seeing a lot of advantage. Now provisioning is now in fingertips for us. Challenges. I think everybody has the same problem. I'm pretty sure lack of centralized governance across the organization. Believe me, one person left our organization. He had, in all the accounts, 800 accounts, what I mentioned, his identity was exist. When I started looking into those identities, the person is not there. And he has programmatic account enabled. He has identity still exist. I was really surprised. The identity was, before I moving to the GIS, I was in cloud security. When I moved, I saw this person left. I was knowing because I was reporting that the person, he left, he's retired. Not the left, he's retired. I knew that the person left. I was surprised to see those 800 identities exist. That's a lack of visibility because it's not centralized. And offboarding and onboarding there was no offboarding and onboarding. Multi-administration creating roles, everybody was creating roles. For what purpose, they don't know. They created, oh, this is not working, okay, let's create one more. That's what the approach was from developers. Right, developers, they only care about their product, nothing else. No unified strategy, identity management, leading access without accountability. No tracking at all. You can create, you can do whatever you want with that identity. They think identity is what? Maybe garbage, they thought about. Nothing else. For me, identity is a currency. If you don't treat your currency, somebody will steal. If you see today how much compromise happening, 99% compromise is because of identity, because they know they don't treat identity well. They know, bad actors know very well, threat always comes from the identity, because everybody knows they put passwords in Excel, they put in password in Notepad, they put password anywhere. They don't care identity. That's the reason the compromise always happens. I don't know how many people know about MITRE framework. If you see the MITRE framework, 90% framework talks about identity, because they know that identity is the key for everything, for compromise. Fragmented and inconsistent IAM configurations for all the business unit. There was no policies, no configurations. Like an example, we started using SCPs, then ensure that if anybody create by default or for any purpose without knowing GIS, which is Global Information Security, we wanted to ensure that everybody use MFA. But before it was not. Real use cases, cross-account usage, as I said, bring POC, create roles, create permissions, create identities, forget it. Then okay, decommission the product, then but all footprint leave behind it. Unmanaged programmatic accounts. Still I am battling with programmatic accounts. Still, I have seen programmatic accounts created from past 8 years back. 8 years back is, I really don't know. I actually enforced them to move towards anywhere, the role anywhere. Nobody wants. No, it's a least privilege for them, least priority for them. They said, no, if I do it, I had to recode it. I asked him, please, okay, at least rotate those keys or keep it in some place very safe and use that. No. We can do it next month, maybe after that month. That month never comes. Decentralized admin control. As I said, every person in AWS account, admin. Not less than admin. Nobody is less than administrator. Because we being in a product company, everybody wanted that administrator access. I said, no, can we have in-policy access? No. Least privilege? No. Only administrator access. Give administrator access, next day, in that IAM, you find 100 accounts. Who created? I created. Why? Business. Okay, they know that. If I talk about business, they say, okay, nobody cares. Because it's a business requirement. What business requirement? They will not explain. Absence of JIT. Now we started also rolling out JIT. That's on-demand privileged accounts. No approval workflow. There was not at all, zero workflow based. That was the real use cases we had. We have plenty of real use. I think, sorry, I mean, we didn't make it all those. Lack of MFA enforcement, static role assignments, overprivileged, no automation for remediations, no logging, and lot of share accounts. One person created keys used in everywhere. Everywhere. If I go and talk, guys, do you know where it is? No, we don't know. Go and read CloudTrails. No support. So what was goal? Well, the real goals. Visibility, the key for us was visibility was a key for us because as I said, thousands of roles. We still have plenty, 20,000 unused roles still from 10,000. Least privilege was another one. Just-in-time access, we wanted to ensure that everybody access has to be, when you are sleeping, you don't need to have access. Why? What? You are sleeping, man. You don't need access. Zero trust architecture, we wanted to use, assume a breach, least privilege. That's the zero trust we wanted to move forward. Federation consistency, policy and governance and control, continuous monitoring auditing. I think everybody wants this. I'm pretty sure everybody wants this. If you don't bring monitoring audit, you will end up with a lot of issues. What was our approach, right? We use native solutions along with the AWS partners to ensure that we actually visualize how our environment exists. One of the solutions we started using Analyzer. And then if you are using Analyzer, you would have seen 3 buckets in unused access, right? Roles, credentials, and the permission. 3 buckets. Last week, we made 0 credential, which has not been used from past 365 days. We ensure that it's now 0. Now the risk reduced. Thanks to Analyzer, it was very informative information. We went with the data. We talked to business. You're not using from past 365 days. We wanted to ensure that we deactivate them. They said they approved because of the data. All these days was more analytic manual method and no data. When we went with the data, they agreed. That's an advantage. We use CloudTrail and configs for automations. track permissions. We are using third party also for tracking permissions along with the IAM Analyzer. Consolidated IAM asset inventory. We wanted to use, as I said, we moved from decentralized to a centralized and ensure that no duplicate of account. If they're existing in centralized IDP, that exists here. No duplicate of accounts. Enable centralized logging and reporting. We now started pushing all the logs to the centralized locations. We started enabling, and we also do reporting. We use Athena, and also we use other Power BI also for reporting purpose. We use CloudTrail as centralized location and keep it for data for 2 years. And we use that more oftenly to ensure that, double. That's a double verification. Analyzer give information, go and check it, okay? Is that real? The CloudTrail showing anything related to that identity. I think 8 minutes left. Approach least privilege access. We started analyzing that person really, or that administrator really need a bigger access. We started reading from past 65 days, audit logs. We did logging. We ensured that the person really need the bigger access or not. We started moving towards privileged access, least privilege, ensuring that he is not using the bigger access. We started using inline policies, more JSON-driven policies. We also started using SCPs. I ensure that I told you, as I said, we are moving towards, even though I'm giving an admin access, he cannot create identities. We are moving towards that. We're ensuring that nobody can create an admin, so identity and keys. Also, we are recently starting RCPs, but though it is not related to identity, but we are ensuring that we are pushing least privileges for that. We also use as KIM solution with partnering with the AWS partner, KIM solution. It's also helping us a lot of identifications by showing us, how overprivileged. It's also informing us overprivileges. Approach for zero trust, migrate from, as I said, users to federated identity, ensuring that every single identity has MFA. Every single. Also protection. Enforcing the policies devise our access via IAM policy center identities. Continuous validating access based on attributes, not just identity. Federation consistency, integrating AWS Identity Center with Azure, which is now Entra ID. Microsoft keep renaming them, branding them with new names. Sometimes I forget which one I'm using it. Okta also we use, and other identity providers. Ping also we use it, and that's the integrating with them single identity. Standardizing login workflows with single sign-on, ensuring that SSO is in place, and it's also user experience, right? When you move from a decentralized environment to a single sign-on or centralized environment, you have SSO. But SSO comes with other problems. You might know about those. If SSO is compromised, it's compromising multiple environment. So we also ensure that SSO is very safe. Okay. Migrate IAM user from static credential to federated roles. We have started migrating less credential, more roles. But if you see, right, even roles comes also compromised. There's a big bank in US. That bank was using a role, and VM was actually using that role, and that VM was exposed, and that was compromised, and role compromised, and role was having an access to S3 bucket, and then it's become a big issue. We had to be very careful. Every steps we had to be careful. We also need to ensure that when we migrate roles to roles, also roles need to be least privileged. Don't give access permission to roles also. Policy and governance. As I said, we started control tower usage of control tower, and ensuring that SCPs, very organized OUs. because we had a lot of business units within the organizations. Each business unit has, again, sub applications, each in each business unit. We created OUs, integrated with control tower, and pushing the guardrails like SCP, RCPs, and landing zones. Also, I don't know how many you started using root elimination. We are the first to eliminate roots. Zero root. We don't have any root account in our organization. We'll only restore in case of break glass sometime. But break glass also we are using some other techniques, which we use that attempt first, and if not, then we restore root. Create a reusable permissions, and ensure that that his job is actually, as I said, we wanted to give an access based on the job, not based on the designation. That's how we are moving towards. Define a clear IAM ownership models to governance and policies. Use IAM access policies, identify unused identities. As I said, we also use IAM analyzers along with the other party. IAM analyzer is really, really good. You can go back for 365 days. That's the beauty of that. Then you can slowly move then 700 days or maybe 600 days, then move towards 90 days. That's the beauty of IAM Analyzer. I really like that, the approach of 365 days. JET, also we are using privilege on demand. That's a JIT, ensuring that, any write access has workflow based and approved. And also we are trying to integrate with ServiceNow, which is our ticketing system. If the ticketing system has a P1 ticket, you get an automatic approval. Other than P1, it will not get an automatic approval. You had to take an approval from the designated approvers. As I said, MFA is the one we are actually ensuring that we are also using MFA configs by any chance. Being an enterprise organization, anything can happen. By any chance somebody creates an identity, that automatically goes on disability if it is not MFA enabled. 1 minute to go. Automated scale. We also use Lambda and Amazon Event Bridge, as I said. But it's not full-fledged because of management decision. As of now, they said, let's have more detective mode rather than protective mode. So now we are in detective mode also, but we started exploring towards the sandbox environment. Automatic provisioning, deprovisioning. As I said, we moved to centralized. The auto deprovisioning and provisioning, it's automatic now. Continuous monitoring, we enable those. As I said, we use CloudTrail at centralized location and move all the CloudTrail to the centralized place. We use that, and we also use guard duty and other components also. We use the CloudTrail injection to our SIM also. We have a SIM solution. We inject that and ensuring that it can detect. Build dashboards. We are using dashboard QuickSight and also OpenSearch to build the dashboards. That's for mainly, basically, those are dashboard used for our CISO. As we moved from decentralized to centralized. The posture itself has become from 100, 0 to at least 50% better. And then we started using the IAM Analyzer. We started cleaning up, still further improved. Regulatory compliance. We are meeting the regulatory compliance. As I said, we are cut across all the industry. So we have a lot of compliance to be met. We have a lot of certifications. High trust, HIPAA, SOC 2, everything we actually ensure that we had to be compliant with those. SOC 2, example I said, we cannot sign our yearly announcement of our revenue unless it's a SOC approved. It has to be SOC 2 approved Then only we can go and announce the results. Operational efficiency and faster incident response, it's become very fast now. Reduce leakage, that's major, major. Lesson learned, if you are decentralized, lot of sprawl. You can have lot of sprawl of our identity and can lead to risk. Centralized, avoid rework and zero trust. Lot of visibility and enforcement. Least privilege is a journey, not yet completed for us. I think it will take some more years for us to complete least privilege. I want to hand over to Jamia.
Thank you all very much for attending. Please fill out the session survey. Come see me tomorrow, IAM307.